this, or can people hear me without this? Do I need this? Okay, I'm using it, fine. Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Anita, and today I will be talking about the research that I've been working on this summer, which involves a text messaging platform to improve memory for the contents of therapy. But before we dive into this, I want to try a little thought experiment with you. So imagine you go to your doctor, and within a short 20-minute visit, she comes to the conclusion that you have bronchitis. Now, in order to treat this bronchitis, she suggests that you start with some antibiotics, and by that, either amoxicillin or azithromycin. And then she goes on and tells you you need X and Y dosages, take it with food. Oh, and by the way, there are a certain number of side effects that you might have to deal with. If you're facing these other problems, you should probably come see me and stop taking the antibiotics. Oh, and also, try these other medicines, and you should drink a lot of water, get a lot of rest, avoid smoke and fumes, and wash your hands. Got all that? Now, if you didn't, that's okay, because that's a lot of important information to take in a very short period of time. And when you get home, I wouldn't be surprised if you looked a little something like these guys. Probably not bright yellow, but slightly overwhelmed, confused, maybe dumbstruck, and realizing that you were nodding along the entire time, but you don't actually remember half of what your doctor told you. Such forgetfulness, it turns out, is not uncommon among patients, and this is the basic premise for my research. So there is a vast body of literature that reveals that memory for medical advice is alarmingly low, hovering at just around 20 to 30%. Turns out that memory for the contents of therapy appears to be equally poor. So for example, a trial with insomnia patients who received cognitive behavioral therapy revealed that at least 1/3 of all recommendations were forgotten, and specific recommendations towards behavior change were recalled even less, at rates as low as 13%. This poses a problem because poor memory can lead to poor adherence to treatments, and that can lead to poorer treatment outcomes. So what can we do about this? One way to help fix this problem might be to provide patients with cognitive support. Simply put, cognitive support is a set of strategies that can help improve memory. So basically, you manipulate information in such a way that you can remember it better in the long term. Cognitive support can come in many different forms, but today we'll be focusing on 3 in particular that are relevant to my study. The first one is repetition. Now, repetition is exactly what it sounds like. You take facts and you reread them, you recite them to help you remember better. The second one is application. This is basically taking an abstract concept and applying it to a concrete everyday situation. So say you're studying for a history exam. You might take the Bill of Rights and find a time in your life where you might exercise each of these rights. Finally, evaluation involves unpacking the information further, looking for causal relationships and going past the surface level details so that you can encode the information better. In terms of this history test, you might take the Civil War and find out what are the implications of the war on either side. What disadvantages or advantages did they have? Now, there's a lot of research to support that strategies like this can be effective in improving learning and memory. Now, could we incorporate these strategies to strengthen memory for medical and psychological advice as well? This is something that my lab is currently looking into. We are in the middle of a large study studying in-session cognitive support for therapy for depression. Now, while we're looking at this, I was also curious about the effectiveness of cognitive support between sessions. This way, the patient would have a chance to revisit the information and commit it to memory after the session has ended. But to do that, we need to turn to a different platform for delivering this information, such as text messaging. So, given the widespread use of mobile technology in our society today, where the ratio of cell phones to people in the United States is actually slightly higher than 1-to-1, a lot of people are turning to mobile platforms to supplement healthcare interventions, increase self-management and adherence to treatments, and provide preventative care and educate people. The research in this field is still relatively new, but so far the studies have been pretty promising. Some examples include studies with diabetes management and smoking cessation, which have shown that text messages actually increase adherence and treatment efficacy. And also, the patients have all said that they've enjoyed receiving these messages, they find them helpful, and they would have liked to continue receiving them. So given this, how can we use this mobile technology as a memory tool? So in the case of our study, could cognitive support text messages after a therapy session help to improve memory for the contents of that session? This brings us to our aims and hypotheses. One of the aims of this study is to determine if cognitive support text messages can enhance patients' memory for the contents of therapy. We would hypothesize that receiving these cognitive support messages would allow the patients to freely recall more therapy contents than controls receiving placebo texts. A second aim is to examine whether patients receiving cognitive support text messages experience greater improvement in treatment outcomes. So in the case of our study, as we're looking at depression, we would expect to see that patients receiving cognitive support text messages experience a greater reduction in their depressive symptoms. So just to sum that up again, would cognitive support A, help memory, and B, would it help with treatment outcomes? So for this study, as it is a pilot study, we are using undergraduate UC Berkeley students who receive class credit for their participation. Our target sample size is 80 participants with 40 in each condition. At this point, we have a grand total of 8 who have completed it, and I'll just go ahead and talk through this. So our participants begin by filling out a pre-screening for depressive symptoms. Once they've done this, they are asked to read a cognitive behavioral therapy lesson on harmful thought patterns. After completing this, they receive the text intervention, which is 6 text messages, one every other day for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, they are evaluated for both their memory, for the contents of the lesson, and their depressive symptoms. So one important concept in cognitive behavioral therapy is that sometimes we have these harmful and just automatic thoughts that distort reality and lead us to view things in negative and hurtful ways. The lesson that our participants receive is focused on teaching them about various harmful thought patterns, such as all or nothing thinking, which here is defined as seeing things as black and white, or if you're not perfect, you're a total failure. This lesson is online and interactive, and they learn about 12 different thinking traps like this one, as well as alternative responses for each. Once they've completed the lesson, they are randomly assigned to receive either the cognitive support text messages or the placebo messages over the next 2 weeks, and we'll go ahead and talk about those now. Of the 6 messages that our cognitive support condition receives, 2 of them are framed as repetition, 2 as application, and 2 as evaluation. Text messages providing repetition simply define the thought or provide the positive alternative just as it was described in the lesson. The application texts provide an example of the harmful thought and then ask the participant to think about a time when they had this type of thinking or to consider alternative ways of thinking. Finally, the evaluation texts provide an example as well, but instead just ask the participant to think of disadvantages to that type of thought. Now we also, in order to take care of any confounding effects of just receiving a text messages, have a control group that receive placebo text, very similar to the cognitive support messages outside of content. So as you can see in the example on the screen, the placebo text messages are nearly identical for structure, length, punctuation, framing, and tone. However, the content of these messages is focused either on the participation in the study or on other health-related facts that are irrelevant to the lesson that they learned. So at the end of the 2 weeks, participants are once again evaluated for their depressive symptoms using the same questionnaire that they received at the pre-screening. This questionnaire is the Inventory of Depressive Symptoms. It's a self-reported questionnaire that is used as a golden standard for measuring depression in clinical psychology. And they also complete 2 different types of memory tasks, a free recall task and a cube recall task. In the free recall task, they're given 5 minutes to write down everything that they can remember from the lesson 2 weeks prior, so just off the top of their head. And with cube recall, They receive a fill-in-the-blank activity with a word bank and are asked to fill in the blanks with the correct harmful thought pattern. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the participants who have completed the study so far. Of the 8 participants, we put 4 in each condition, and 7 of them right now are girls, or female, and the subjects eventually, as we continue to recruit more participants, will be matched for age, gender, education, and race. For our analyses for our first aim, we'd be running independent sample t-tests to look for significant differences between the cognitive support and control groups in their recall for therapy content. So as of now, considering that our sample is completely underpowered, we cannot make any extrapolations and we have no significant results to report. But if you see here, these are the means that we're looking at and comparing with the standard deviation in parentheses. And for our second aim, we also use independent sample t-tests again to look for significant differences between the cognitive support and control groups for the change in depressive symptoms from the pre-screening to after they receive text messages. Once again, we have the means and their standard deviations, and currently this data is also not significant nor can be extrapolated given the sample size. So this is an ongoing study, so basically starting next semester I'll be recruiting more participants, collecting more data, and we're looking forward to seeing what happens next and looking for significant trends and results. We've also given our participants a text message acceptability survey where essentially we're asking them how helpful were these messages or how much did you like receiving them. And on a scale of 1 to 9, so far the average has been a 6 or a 7. And I'm just going to leave you with a quote that one of our participants left. She says, "I really liked it. At one point in time, I realized that I was waiting for them since I got them at unexpected times. After reading the text messages, I would think about them for some time, and overall, I really had fun with them. So I'm looking forward to seeing where our data takes us next." To end, I just want to thank some people, my PI, Allison Harvey, and my grad student, Jason Lee, who has been a huge support, like every single step of the way, would not be here without him, and Nikki, Adrian, and Jen, and everybody at the Golden Bear Superfood Research Clinic, as well as all my SURF advisors, Nathan for getting me through this presentation and everything, Timo for CPHS and the proposal, and Leah for coordinating SURF, and of course SURF LNS for giving us all this opportunity.